Good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, February 3rd. A new crew today. You might not be, you might not be expecting these voices. So we're going to open up with some U.S. jobs.
Do we have a number?
I'm not seeing a number yet, so I think we're going to move on to
Okay.
Apple until we get that number in.
Strong start. Waiting on the number.
Hey, Steve, can you tell us about Apple, the first EPS miss in 7 years?
Yeah, so that caught a lot of headlines for Apple last night. Not great news, not a great headline for the company. Basically, every product segment of Apple that you can think of was down during the quarter, with the exception of their services and subscriptions. So they sold less iPhones despite the 14 rollout. Homes and wearables was down a lot. That segment consists of the Apple Watch, and weakness in the Apple Watch was a big part of that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if kind of the fad of having your Alexa or your Apple Home, I don't even know what they're called, but your Apple Home is kind of waning and they're going to see some headwinds there. So all in all, not a great report for Apple. That being said, the stock's actually holding up better than some of the ones we're about to talk about. It was down a few percentage points after hours yesterday, but it's kind of clawing its way back, and now it's down less than 1%. So not a great report, but Apple is hanging on and really emphasizing that service is part of their business.
All right. Well, we have jobs numbers.
We have jobs numbers. Let's go.
What do you think? Big? That's what we were expecting.
If we were expecting, I'm going to go with big.
517,000 new jobs.
Oh, wow. So I have these expectations in front of me, and that's more than I think we were expecting.
Way more than we were expecting.
Yeah.
Unemployment rate falls to 3.4%.
So that's a really strong jobs number.
Very strong jobs.
We had our interest rate increase earlier this week, if you remember. And during the press conference, Powell was talking about how he thinks the disinflation process has started, but he thinks that there will be more rate increases. And here at Narwhal, we noted the plural on the increases. And I think that this report, if jobs reports are as strong as they initially appear, which based off the, Jonathan's phone, it appears that they are, expected wage growth, payrolls almost tripled expectations. I think that this sets the table for the Fed to be more hawkish down the road.
I think Ben Nye would say America's coming back.
America's strong. People have been predicting our downfall for years at this point, and we keep on chugging along, still hanging around. It's good to be an American.
They hate us, man. They just want to be us, you know? All right, let's move on to Google. Tell us about some weak ad revenue.
Yeah, so Google's report was in line with some of their peers in the advertising space. We'll get to the one in a second that actually had a strong advertising quarter, but Google was weak on advertising. Meta, despite going up 25% yesterday, still said that they think the advertising market will be down. And while it's more stable than it was before, it's still lower and weaker than it was at the height of 2021 when those stocks were peaking. And Snapchat as well, which I believe was talked about on this call a couple days ago. It also is having trouble with their advertising business. So not doing great there. The interesting area from Google's report, though, is on AI and chatting. So I'll pass it back to you guys on that. Google discussed how they are going to try to incorporate AI into their search process. And I would argue that is in direct response to the popularity of ChatGPT, and more accurately, Microsoft's investment in the company that made ChatGPT and their plan to incorporate it into Bing. So do you guys have any thoughts on where that type of stuff may be going?
I don't have a ton of experience. I know everyone's talking about ChatGPT, but it seems like that's sort of the next step for these big companies, is like going into that AI from cloud or whatever, going into AI and making that number one, it's just a buzzword that I think the market wants to hear. And then number two, I just think that's sort of the next iteration. So trying to work that in, and Google gets left behind if they don't react to what Microsoft's done. So I think it's just kind of like the arms race in the AI space.
Yeah, I keep trying to play with it, and there's always a queue. So
Really?
yeah, it's people are using it, and it's getting a ton of use.
Yeah,
I haven't had any
definitely.
firsthand experience though.
Yeah, my one of my friends loves using it. He uses it all the time. So
Yeah, it's kind of scary how personable
Mhm.
it communicates. I don't know. I'm not really looking forward to the future of it.
I
Honestly.
I saw something that the ChatGPT passed the level 3 the CFA exam, which people have to study, 3 months for. They recommend 300 hours, and it was able to do it right away. Which you could argue it should be able to when it has access to the internet. And if,
Right.
I had access to the internet. If I took that test, I would be able to pass it too.
Same.
But it still seems impressive.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
All right, let's move on to some Amazon. Beat on Q4 revenue.
Yep. So Amazon was that company that I was talking about where the ad business is actually strong. Where when you think of Amazon, you don't really think of advertising, but they've been emphasizing that a lot over the past year. Their whole pitch on advertising, which I personally think is really compelling, is that instead of companies who are doing the advertising having to advertise on Google or Meta and get you to click and go somewhere else, when you go to Facebook, for example, to scroll through and see what your friends are posting, you don't necessarily go to shop. That's a higher barrier to clear. When you're on Amazon, you're planning to shop. Your mindset is, I'm about to buy something. So if you can advertise on that platform instead of on a separate platform when you're not planning on shopping and having to convince people to shop, that would just be easier for those companies to get more conversions and have a higher ROI. And the data so far has actually proven that there's a lot of credibility to that thesis. So that's something that we're monitoring going forward. In Amazon's traditional businesses, they are kind of flattish to down on their retail sales, and the cloud has decelerated pretty significantly. So Amazon Web Services grew about 27% during the quarter. And for most companies, you'd be like, wow, 27%, that's incredible. But for Amazon's cloud, they've been growing 40, 50%. So that's a pretty steep drop for them.
And it looks like they're down a little over 5% pre-market off the report. Can I ask a quick question, Steve?
Yeah.
So in those three earnings, it's Google's down 4-ish%, Amazon's down 5%, Apple's down, like you said, like around 1%. Why do they seem to get a pass when the other two get beat up a little bit more?
Why does Apple get the pass? I think that's a good question. I think their results weren't as bad. I talked a lot about the advertising, but right now what people are really looking for at Amazon is that cloud growth. So similar to Microsoft and even Google, they're going to get punished a lot for a deceleration because of the value that is placed into the company from that business. In terms, sorry, can you repeat your question?
No, yeah, that sort of answers, why Apple is holding up a little bit better than the other two.
Yeah,
and
so
that
in terms
makes
of
sense.
Apple, I think people like the services kind of as a diversifier because it's recurring revenue. But I think that they just kind of tend to get the benefit of the doubt as well.
Yeah, they've probably earned that, I guess.
All right, moving on to Starbucks. John Grayson, our resident Starbucks expert.
I don't know about that. I don't drink coffee, so I don't know if I'm the right person to answer.
That means you're not biased.
That's true. So Starbucks came in and missed slightly on EPS and revenue. What was notable is their international data. So same store sales in North America, they beat slightly. Internationally, the expectation was to be down 3.87% for the quarter, and they were down 13% for same store sales. And in China, the estimate was to be down 13%, and they were down 29%. So we've talked about it a lot. At least I've heard it a lot talked about in our PM meetings. They continue to push this international strategy, and it continues to seem like it's pulling them down. And I know management believes in it, and they're going to continue to do it. But I know we have been wary of that strategy, and it continues to seem like it's not playing out for them. And $5 for a cup of coffee is a lot to spend on a cup of coffee. So get something at home and make it at home and save some money. That's my 2 cents.
Completely agree. Also, not a coffee drinker.
Love that.
All right. Moving on to Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I want to hear a little bit about Ford, and then I'd love to hear Ford compared to GM because GM reported earlier this week and had a really strong quarter. And just like to hear the comparison between the two.
Yeah, so Ford had a pretty tough quarter. I'm not sure what it's down right now, but I saw like 7-8% last time I looked. Basically, they are cutting prices in line with Tesla on their electric vehicles. With these traditional car companies, a lot of what people are looking at is those electric vehicles. And Tesla and Ford cutting prices has been a red flag for some people. GM, notably, to answer your question, did not cut their prices. And so a lot of people question that decision by GM when your two biggest competitors, most would say, are taking an action. You got to be really confident that you are right to not take that action, because that's really a bet on the economy. Is the argument is that if the economy's not good, people are going to stop buying cars. They might buy more cars if the prices are cheaper. However, something that I found that I think is a big part of the reason for the price cuts is that the price point of Ford and Tesla's was above the cutoff from the Inflation Reduction Act for an electric vehicle tax credit. And GM's base price point was already below that cutoff. So the cutoff really just put Tesla and Ford right below to get people to that cutoff level. So I think that GM was already there. They just weren't pricing at as high of a point. And that they're trying to spur demand. All three companies are trying to take advantage of the IRA to spur demand and keep growth, even if there is some wavering in the economy. The car companies actually do a lot of macro commentary. I'm fairly certain that GM has a chief economist that they employ that just works on figuring out where the economy is going for them. And GM is confident in the state of the economy. Ford is less so. Ford said they think we're going to have some sort of recession coming up, and GM said that they think the economy is going to hold up. So it's kind of this two iconic American car brands going head to head yet again. They've been fighting for the last 100 years, and maybe they can't help themselves but take the opposite point of view.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's interesting about the tax credits. I didn't know that. Yeah. That makes sense why they would have cut their prices. So no, cool. Appreciate that.
I saw a headline that GM partnered with Netflix to put more EVs in their shows.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Netflix always in their movies. I don't think it was GM in the past, but like in their action movies, they always linger on the cars. So it makes sense that they've done that and probably start to see some Hummer EVs in the future.
I like that. That's awesome.
All right. Logan, do we have any comments in the chat?
Questions?
No questions.
Compliments?
All right.
Compliments.
You guys are doing a great job.
Well, hey, please like, subscribe, turn that notification bell on, and we'll be back on Monday. Thank you all very much for tuning in.